Just, try not to miss a thing, that I think we all, the greatest kind of erosion to my own personal happiness was thinking I was too important.
20 minutes ago. And now I have a kid who's just going to be a senior in college. And it is stunning to me that I'm not still that guy, picking up a toddler.
It's not work-life balance, it's work-life harmony. Work-life balance implies it's 50-50. I mean, you don't want 50% of your life, to go to just work and your loved ones only get half of you.
Welcome to the Channel 2.0 podcast, where we talk all things channel, everything from 2 a.m. trust to Channel 2.0. But today we're kind of going off script. A couple months ago, we had the opportunity of having 3 amazing new fathers on the show to do a dad podcast and talking about all the fun things that you get to do when you become a new dad. Well, today's a little bit different with Father's Day right on the horizon. I decided to go find a bunch of men with gray hair or no hair at all to have a conversation about raising children. So, gentlemen, welcome to the podcast, and more importantly, happy Father's Day.
Thank you,
Cameron. I was wondering how you were going to get to explaining the delta between the young fathers and whatever you were going to refer to us as. So
the wise fathers, the ones that have been through the battle trenches and have earned all the gray hairs everywhere and that type of stuff. I want to start it out. Kurt, do dad jokes still make sense when you have older kids? Do they care about the dad jokes? Do
oh my God! Like my son is like the master purveyor of dad jokes. He hit me with one. He hit me with one the other night. It actually took me a second. He says, the carpenter ant walks into a bar and the bartender says, "What do you have?" And he says, "Where's the bartender?" Where's the bartender? Oh. That was from my 25-year-old.
So at this point they're developing their own dad jokes.
It's coming back at me, right?
Yeah, Chris, I can't imagine that you didn't escape raising kids without some dad jokes.
It's funny. I never really called them just dad jokes. It was just my corny sense of humor. I didn't have like a setup and a punchline, but no, I just always took that. The situational comedy was more my shtick and still is. And even though my youngest daughter just got married, 24 years old, and my oldest son is 31, they still roll their eyes. They still, and by the way, one of my coping mechanisms, I think we'll probably get to later, but is having like a family group chat. And I never really participate in it unless I see an opportunity to make fun of one of my kids or say something funny. And so that's where my dad humor comes in.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Rob, how about you? Do your kids appreciate your dad joke humor?
First of all, let me say my kids are not quite adult. They're both in college. Casey just graduated high school 2 weeks ago, and Jake's coming back as a senior. So they're still on the front side of some of the things we're going to talk about here. But, in a very respectful way, I am the joke. That's just how it works around here. And so my dad joke is actually, I made it up. I actually made it up myself, analog, no help from any software of any kind, any species at all.
Dad GPT.
That's my disclaimer.
And it actually, but I did run it past Chad and thought it was very funny. So I'm happy to deliver it if you like.
Yeah, let's go. You can't have that without.
Can't leave us hanging.
So what's the difference between a dad and an ATM?
Nothing.
That's right.
They both pay and pay and pay.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of being an ATM, Rob, did you always want to be a dad? Was that something as a child that you wanted to be, or is this something that you kind of grew into?
I always wanted to be a dad. I always had a vision of having a family. As opaque as it may have been and misguided as I may have been when I was young, it was always a thing that was important to me, and it was always a thing that was important when I was out there, kind of on my way to finding who I was going to spend the rest of my life with. The interesting thing about it is I didn't dig my heels in and slow the process. I didn't pump the brakes on the whole thing until after I was married, when it was imminent and it was close, and I got what I would kind of consider cold feet for some what I thought were really good reasons.
What were those reasons?
Well, I will tell you, I'm 61, right? So I was raised in the late 60s through the 70s, and parents were pretty disinterested back then. It was just the way. They didn't follow. They didn't really know. They didn't have a lot of wisdom. They didn't have a lot of wisdom about really what makes people tick, and I didn't have a great relationship with my dad. And when it came right down to it, what caused me to pump the brakes was my refusal to perpetuate what I grew up with on my children. And I wasn't clear that I was ready to do that. I wasn't clear that I was ready to break the cycle. And when it sort of got time, now I'm an older parent. My first wasn't born until I was 40, and my wife Caroline's not that far. She says she's in a different generation than me, but she's not that far behind me. And so it wasn't like we had forever. And when I got a little nervous about it, and she's kind of looking at the clock and going, "Hey, this is a topic for us." She's my wife for a reason. She knows how to work with me. And she said, "I'm good with you having an issue, and I will wait so long as you're working on it." And so I went to work on it, got into some therapy for a couple of years way back then, and learned that I actually had the steering wheel, and I could raise my kids any way I wanted to without any long shadow over that. And when I realized it, I walked in one day and I said, "I'm good. I'm ready. Let's do it." And we did.
Yeah, great story. Kurt, how about you? Always wanted to be a dad?
Always, and for completely different reasons. I was fortunate. I had, what I think is the best dad in the world. I have four brothers, and my dad unfortunately died early. He died in 2004, and went to work on a Friday and was dead the next Thursday. Got sick really quickly, but there was about a 48-hour period where he knew he was a medical professional. He was a dentist, and so he understood what was happening to him. And we had 48 hours with him as he was deteriorating. He got to have 2-hour conversations with myself and all four of my brothers. And if any of us were on this call, we could look you in the eye and tell you we were my dad's favorite, because he convinced us all for completely different reasons. We're all incredibly different, but he was amazing that way. And that's why he was a great dentist and a great human being. He helped a lot of people in his life. So I looked at the idea, the honor of being a father would be to, someday have, that type of relationship with my own children. I ended up only having one child. My wife and I had one, and waited 2 years, and I was on the road a ton at that stage. We all kind of went through that point, and we were really enjoying just having him. And so we just kind of settled in, and my son is now 25 years old. I've, have an amazing relationship with him. Never went through the awkward teenage stuff. He's still my best friend. I raised him at music festivals. So he's, basically been going to Bonnaroo since he could, stand up straight. So it's, I hope that, at 25 and now in this business and, in kind of my orbit a little bit, that he would tell you that, someday that he had an amazing dad and they had that kind of relationship. I'm pretty sure he can tell you that he was my favorite, but there's not as much competition as there were with my four brothers.
Easy to be the favorite of one.
Right.
Hard to be the favorite of one, maybe sometimes too, I can imagine. Chris, why don't you talk to us about your children? How old are they, and were they always planned, or were these guys surprises to you?
How much time do we have? We have four kids, and right off the bat, got married kind of young by most people's definition. 22, I was in the Army, and some of being in the Army too, it just makes you think you're older. Looking back, I'm like, what was I thinking? But at 22, I had 4 people working for me. I had about $500,000 of inventory I was responsible for. So,
Chris, just to tell you, at 22, that was my 3rd sophomore year in college. I wasn't even close.
Oh, okay. There you go. Yeah, I mean, I felt like I was the man. I mean, maybe I was in my own mind. But so we got married, and within within like 6 months, she was pregnant, and we had our first child, and it was our son. And it was like, wow. I mean, and my son Marcus was the first male on the Whitaker side. So my father was very excited to have a grandson with the last name. So that was kind of a big deal. And then $3 in a row, and that was great too. But although, the last number 4, Phoebe's actually downstairs now. That was kind of a surprise. We didn't plan on that, but we were like, I couldn't imagine life without her. And we even joke, Marcus, and then Chloe's number 2. It's like, if we would just stop there, we would have had the perfect, family of 4. It'd been so much easier. They don't. Hannah and Phoebe don't find humor in that joke. But yeah, no, I had a great dad too. I had an amazing dad. I always looked at him as like 10 foot tall, bulletproof. He was a career home builder. So this guy could do anything: stand up walls, put the roofs on, plumbing, painting, electrical. There's nothing he couldn't do. And he worked 6, 7, sometimes 7 days a week. He was a hardworking man. And then I've been blessed with a great father-in-law too. So my father-in-law, he just turned 90. They just celebrated their 70th wedding anniversary.
Whoa.
And so, yeah, he's a great role model too. And he's a saint. You never really see him lose his temper. And for those that know me, I'm a pretty emotional guy. I'm very high strung, and I don't think I lose my temper, but I can get irritated pretty quick, right? So, but no, it's been awesome being a dad. I mean, and I feel like it's also probably responsible of us to acknowledge not everyone has the ability to be a dad for whatever reason, and for me, I was like, man, that kind of breaks my heart sometimes. But I get it. Everybody's got their own thing. But I know there are men and women that want children and for whatever reason can't. But by all means, it doesn't define who you are, right? But it definitely, for me personally, that is a big part of who I am, right? So that it's like, what better legacy can you leave than some humans you had a part in making? That's a pretty good legacy. That's the only legacy that really matters to me.
Yeah, look, I've had a lot of different titles in my career, right? But I'll tell you, the one that I feel most honored with to have is that of a father. What's interesting is in my work career, I've had the opportunity to have a lot of leadership positions and dictate directions and create stuff. Whatever's in my brain, I may be able to create it and build it, and things just kind of go as planned. And I think that's probably one of the biggest places I went wrong being a father. I had all of these expectations of the way my kids were going to be raised, the way that they were going to think, what they were going to do. They were going to be athletic sports kids. They were going to do all of these things. And I quickly learned that we have very little control over what their interests are, what they do. Kurt, tell me, how did you manage the raising of a child that kind of has a mind of their own?
Well, it's interesting because my son, as far as, the way I think we share a lot values wise, but if you look at I grew up, I was from 3 years old, I just had a ball in my hands. It was basketball, football, baseball, whatever. And all the way through high school, I was the quarterback of the football team, the captain of the basketball team, the captain of the track team. I was like that kid. And my son, I was like, I got a son. He's going to be like my prodigy. He's going to be all of that. Well, I was 6'1" in 9th grade. My son was the smallest kid on every team he was on as a kid growing up. And he's going to kill. He actually, Todd Allen, he works at VCOM now, an app direct company. So if he's going to
totally see this come through.
But we took him to play, basketball, and he set really good picks. We to play soccer, and he would shadow people and all that. But then he picked up a guitar, and he was prodigious, and he could pick out a tune immediately. And he picked up a lacrosse stick, and he was lacrosse clicked with him. Because he's a grinder, and he knew I can outwork everyone else. So even as the smallest kid in the team, if I, work on the wall more than they do, I have better stick skills than they do, I run harder and I run longer, that I can outperform them. And he did that. And then genetics caught up, and all of a sudden he's, a 5'10", 190-pound junior who still has that chip on his shoulder of the smallest kid on every team when he was a kid. And he's the captain of his lacrosse team. And then he had picked up wakeboarding. So he ended up being just a tremendous athlete, competes in professional wakeboard tournaments, has been all over the world doing that thing, still competes. He works now too, and wears a knee brace because 25 is old in that world. But he found his things. So although it was very different, I expected to have the football player, basketball player guy, and I would argue he's a lot more kind of thoughtful than I was at his age, but he's probably not as gregarious as I am, but who the hell is, right? We don't need more of that. But he was the kid, he never missed a day of school from kindergarten through 12th grade, never missed a practice. He's the most reliable human being, the stuff that I would aspire to, but I never achieved. He had that as a young person, and he has perspective. He gets it. He understands, Rob and I, we were talking before the call about generational things. He has a perspective on what the real goal is, that being human happiness and joy and a connection to whether it's a higher power or whatever, whatever it is, just connection, human connection, spiritual connection. He's figured that out at 25. It took me, till 45 to even whiff at some of that type of perspective. So I'm incredibly proud, but also in awe of some of the people in this next generation, and super hopeful.
They are. They I think have come out being more emotionally aware, higher EQ, than I think most of us have achieved. I always laugh because I feel like my mom and myself and my daughter are all kind of becoming self-aware all at the same time and working on it together. It's a great story. Rob, what shocked you most raising kids that you didn't expect to happen?
One would be how comfortable I was doing it, being a parent, being a father. I won't, the first 12 months, 15 months, is a little rocky because there's a certain kind of program that goes on that's really hard it's kind of like sticking your hand in a blender that's on. It's difficult. You're not in control by any means, and you're not the one. You're sort of there to serve. And I did a great job of it the first time through, and I did not do as good a job of it the second time through. That would be very clear. I'm glad they both turned out great. So I didn't cause any lasting damage. But once they started to, I always said having kids is like having pets that learn how to talk. And once they started giving back, once it was not all take, once there was a give and get in the relationship, it lit me up, and I was really, really tuned into it. And I didn't realize, because of maybe my issues of my experience being somebody's son, but it was surprising to me, but very comfortable.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I feel like I was a lot like Chris. I had my first kid at 22. So I was a child raising a child, and I'm always jealous. I'm always jealous of those people who had kids later on in life when they actually know who they were and didn't have to find themselves out.
I was 32 and I had no idea who I was. So that was
are you still working on that?
Well, yeah, it's definitely a work in progress. But 57 is a lot firmer than 32 was. I can tell you that much.
Good point.
So my oldest, Jake, wasn't born until a couple of months before my 40th birthday.
Wow.
So one of the things we had going for us, or I had going for me, was, I had I had been a COO of a company for 7 or 8 years already. So we had means, we had freedom, we traveled, we got a lot of stuff out of our system. And so I did have the issue of, oh, all of this great stuff is going to come to a screeching halt. And to some degree it did. But I will say, having the perspective of a mature 40-year-old, reasonably mature 40-year-old, before the first kid came was, I think, a tremendous advantage. Because there were questions that came up every day that weren't daunting to me. I just understood. And so I had a perspective that was very valuable to raising. But I will tell you, maybe I'm jumping the gun here on a little bit of the conversation for downstream. And that is that the downside of that is that I'm not quite empty nested yet, because it's summer and both boys are home for the summer. But the prospect of having all that freedom again in my early 60s, as opposed to a parent or a dad that might be in his early 50s or late 40s or something like that. So I'm seeing it on the other end. I got what I needed, and it really worked out great in the first couple of chapters. Now I'm kind of looking at, I'm rounding third and I'm staring at home and I'm thinking, okay, it better be a Tom Brady fourth quarter.
So you're not going out and hitting the nightclubs at night, right? You're taking your afternoon naps and.
Well, I'm not at the afternoon nap stage yet.
Hey, do not knock the afternoon nap. Like,
seriously. Kurt's there. Then.
1099 over here, self-employed. Naps are my thing.
Chris, what was the most shocking thing that you didn't expect being a dad?
Yeah, this is a true story. So yeah, again, the first 6-7 months of marriage, we lived in an apartment in Northern Virginia. It was a super clean apartment. Everything was in its place. Everything had a place. Every place had a thing. I mean, we'd come home and it looked like a model home. I think I'd really underestimated just how messy kids are. I mean, I don't remember being that. I had 2 sisters, I don't think we were ever that messy. Of course, I was a kid, so I couldn't remember it. But that was probably the biggest thing. I remember going, holy cow, why bother cleaning, man? These kids were, and we had them pretty in rapid succession. So that was probably number one. But a funny little side story, I think the year was 1991. I got my first handy computer from Radio Shack, and Windows 3.1, and I'm working on a document. And my son's probably a year and a half old, and he crawls over and he unplugs the computer. I almost just went through the roof. I mean, because that was before autosave, and there was no autosave, so I lost 3 pages of stuff. And at that point, I'm like about to go for him, like, you're going to grab the dog, they just pee in the carpet and whip it. And, that's my son. I can't do that. He doesn't understand what he did. But yeah, it definitely changes your life. And I do talk to, my daughter just got married. I was like, hey, no need to be in a hurry. Live life, do what you can, and there's no regrets. But yeah, it definitely changes your life vibe for sure. But no bad surprises for sure. It was just more like, holy cow, this is a lot of work cleaning up after all these kids. It just never ends.
Yeah. Speaking of cleaning up, I had the fortunate opportunity for when we had our first kid, I was making $10 an hour being a warehouse worker. She was making $8.75 at some place. We're now, a couple weeks away from delivering our first kid, and she says to me, "Hey, when we have this kid, I don't want to work. I want to stay home and raise it." I mean, there wasn't a more anxious moment in my life than I think of realizing, "Oh crap, what did I do?" kind of moment at that point. And I think most of my work career has been on the backs of that experience, a little almost PTSD of, hey, my job is to provide for the family while my wife was the one raising them and rearing them and being there for the emotional support. It's always a very tough balance of knowing how much time to spend working and providing enough income to provide for the family, and just that whole work dynamic. Rob, how did your family do it? What was the relationship between you and your spouse to work on that? And what recommendations do you have for people who are trying to figure out that balance?
Wow. Well, as I said earlier, the scenario, the context of us having our first kid, when he was born, I had already been a COO for 9 years, and so I was on a career track that was kind of there weren't any questions that needed to be asked. My wife Caroline is a superstar. Uh, Professionally, she has always had an important job, and she has always worked. And so the negotiation was about how two busy people, manufactured the time and attention to get it done and get it done right. So she had her limitations. We were lucky enough, though, to have somebody in the house, a nanny full time that was part of our family, so that our kids had somebody who we knew loved them and was dedicated to us and was essentially part of our family, and that made things a lot easier. In the evening and in the night hours, those things, all the same issues come up, and it wasn't easy. But Caroline, she's stout. She dug deep and she showed up every day for everything. And I can't necessarily say that I did the same. I mean, I did the best I could at the time. But it was on shoulders. She made it happen. And she never skipped a beat in doing it.
What would you, if you could go back and do it again, what would you do differently?
Well, I left that position in after Jake was about a year old. I decided I was no longer, that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be in that company anymore. And the first thing I did was take 6 months off and hung out with my kid. So I didn't work for literally 6 months when he was about a year old. And that was a great thing for me, bonding and getting to know that relationship at a very early age. Leave me alone with him. I broke his arm once before he was 18 months old, playing around and stuff. So, I would say that
there's a learning curve to this, right? Like
yeah,
we didn't all get it right in the beginning.
Actually, well, the truth is he did it to himself, but I was the adult in charge, so I'm blamed for it. But I would say this, and this is I don't mean this to be tone deaf advice, but what we do to earn money, even if we do it with passion and commitment and dedication and all of that, it's just what we do to earn money. The real stuff of life is not what happens while you're at work and what you bring home. It's what you do with the people you love and the people that love you. And don't think for a second that you'll have time to do it down the road. That's not how it works. The road comes fast, and the stages. One of the things that shocks me in the 20+ year history of raising kids is how fast it went. I was 41 20 minutes ago, and now I have a kid who's going to be a senior in college, and it is stunning to me that I'm not still that guy, picking up a toddler. And so don't think you'll get to it later. Get to it now, integrate it, make it part of your life. And if you got to sacrifice something along the way to make meaning in your life, you got to do it.
Yeah, man, that's a tough one to follow. I think one of the biggest struggles I have nowadays going through the loss of my daughter is I sit there and think about all the things I missed, right? I tried to make it to all the basketball games and break dance, whatever, and all of that stuff, but I missed a lot. I was in the middle of building a business and a company, and I missed it. Luckily, I had a really good exit from that kind of made it feel like it was worth it until we lost my daughter. And then I sit there and think I would give every dollar to have her back, but it's not a possibility. You just can't do that. So you think, okay, so money doesn't matter. Like that's not really where it's worth, because I'd give it all back to have her.
I didn't say money didn't
No,
matter. Didn't say money didn't matter.
Because
it's just not the entire recipe of a successful life.
That's correct. Because I think at the same time, it's like you have to have money to survive. So how do you balance that? I think I realized that everybody does it a little bit differently, and there's not really a wrong way to do it. It's just your preference and trying to figure out what feels best for you, right? Kurt, you feel any different to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a quarter turn on that. I think we're aligned, but just the way that I like to think of it is that for the early stages of my life, especially when I became a new father, like, that I think we can all identify with that feeling when suddenly it's one thing, like your wife counts on you, but like I count on my wife more than she counts on me. Like, but she's the reason I get where I need to be and all those kind of things. She would be fine if I fell off the face of the earth. But that kid comes along, you fully realize that you're living your life for another human being. Like that perspective, really changes things. And so what happened then for me is then like money and ambition and goals, those became like, throw Maslow's hierarchy of needs up. I'm taking like security as a need, but it's for me and these other people. So the pursuit of money, that like became a goal. And as I got older and kind of went through some of my own stuff, and Cameron, you know this, and I'm pretty transparent about it, but I got sober about 15 years ago. My son was 10 years old at the time. And as part of that kind of psychic change and kind of spirituality that I got into at that time that I needed so badly, I started to realize that some of the things that I thought were goals were actually just results. They were things that are a byproduct of if I just do the next right thing. If I, the true roots of happiness. There's an author, Arthur Brooks, that I follow really closely, talks about it. That it's earned success, human connection, and being of service to others. Like the rest of the stuff is results. And we're all really lucky in this industry that those three things are integral to what we do for a living. That we solve problems for people, we help people. We're, obviously very connected in this industry. I've been friends with, all of you and hundreds of others. Like you could not extract my personal life from my professional life. They're intertwined completely. And that when I started to think of the security and money and houses and that kind of stuff as exactly what they are, the result of doing the next right thing, the result of getting up every day and, being a good human, dealing with people honestly and with integrity, being honest and integrous with your stakeholders, investors, shareholders, like all those things. Guess what happens when you do all those things? You string together enough good days like that, you're going to make a couple of bucks.
Chris, how do you know what the right thing is? What is the right thing?
Man, it's so funny. It's so funny you ask it that way, because one of my mantras, I got a long answer here, Cameron. I'm going to try to shorten it for you. But to answer that, I got to tell you, we live about 7 miles from Mill Creek High School, and it was the furthest away bus stop. So at first I was mad about that because my kids had to get up at like 5 a.m., especially my daughters, to get ready because the bus came at like 6:15. So I drove them to school, all four of them, through 4 years of high school. And part of me, by the time, by the third year of doing that, I realized like, wait a minute, this might be the only, 15, 20 minutes I get with them all day. Because after I dropped them off, I was going to work, driving to Alpharetta, hour commute, whatever.
No traffic in Alpharetta.
No traffic. Yeah. But when I drop them off, I don't know where it came from. I'm sure I've discovered everyone's great quotes came from someone else's great quotes. So I'm sure I've heard this from somewhere. I just don't remember where. But I was saying, hey, stay focused and do the right thing. So that when you said that, I was like, wow, that's funny. Because for years, in fact, I used to tell my employees, my team members, when I was managing teams, hey, just stay focused and do the right thing. I said that for a decade before one day I said, well, damn, how do you know what to focus on and what's the right thing? And so, yeah, I again, internalizing that further, I was just like, okay, well, staying focused, obviously be organized, have a to-do list, have a goal, have an objective, and the right thing, it may change, based off your your ethics and your beliefs and the norms you're with. But for me, ultimately, it all comes down to love, man. I mean, I'm all about love. I love my kids, and whenever I was that was kind of my true north is love. It's like, hey, what can I? And by the way, this matured over time. I didn't start out that way. I mean, I like a lot of young fathers too. I mean, of course, being in the military, that's one reason I got out of the military. Honestly, I got deployed the second time to Korea. It's an unaccompanied tour. Wife got pneumonia while I was gone. She had 2 toddlers. I just felt terrible about that, and she didn't live near family. Because I mean, and God bless the men and women that stay in for 20 and 30 years. I thought I could do it, but I tapped out. I'm like, I'm going home, man. I can't do this. But I got out because I wanted to be a better husband and father. And again, a lot of men and women figure out a way to make that work. It's hard, and a lot of them don't, honestly, too. That's a tough line of work. But it always came down to I just wanted to know I loved them, and it was trial and error. And it's funny, some of the comments you made earlier made me think of some memories, and in terms of, especially looking back, which is I think the real cool theme of this conversation is, if for me, definitely an empty nester, almost. And I'll tell you what I mean by there later. But my son, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, Marcus, great guy. Again, he's just, I'm so grateful to have a great relationship with all 4 kids. But somehow the topic came up, he had a flat tire. And he looked at me and he goes, Dad, I had to YouTube how to change a tire. You never taught me how to change a tire. And dude, oh man, that hit me hard, man. I mean, I was like mortified. I'm like, I failed as a father. I didn't teach my only son how to change a tire. So if you have young ones, teach them how to change a tire. Teach them to change the darn tire.
Play card.
Yeah, that too. I mean, hey, sometimes AAA might not show up. So yeah, that's a good one too. And then the second time he hit me with something that went through the heart, and we've since corrected. But I used to tell him and his buddy when they're like 6 or 7 years old, hey, we're going to go camping one day. We're going to go camping. We're going to go camping. We're going to go camping. For years, we're going to go camping. Never took them camping, because I was always busy.
Someday, someday.
We'll go camping someday. And the irony of that is, probably about 5 years ago, he took me camping. We went on our first camping trip, Linville Gorge up in North Carolina, and slept 2 nights on the trail, and it was amazing. And I've apologized probably 4 or 5 times. So I'm so sorry I didn't take you camping when you were a kid. I mean, of course, back then I couldn't afford the camping gear because I was like, going check to check in my 20s. So yeah, a long answer there. The right thing. I think whatever can help you get closest to showing love is got to be the right thing to me.
I appreciate that. I feel like Rob had an answer to knowing what's right. What's right, Rob? How do you know what's right? When you're a father and you have a child who's coming to you who wants to do something, or there's an issue or there's a problem, and you can't decide which way to go. How do you decide what the right thing is?
Cameron, this is probably going to ring true to you a little bit because you know me pretty well. And that is, I have tried to practice the art of never deciding in advance. My job, I think, as a parent is to create the context where they can find it on their own with some trial and error in a relatively safe environment. And so I've talked to my kids like they were adults since they were in diapers. And for a couple of years, it fell on deaf ears. But there is a point where they catch up with you and they begin to hear you. And I have always tried to teach my boys to look at the context of the questions they're asking, weigh what's important to them with their values and priorities, and make good decisions. And don't be afraid to make the decision and then put it into play. And if it doesn't work, what'd you learn? I've always felt that my job was to facilitate my boys to grow a great gut instinct, to be able to navigate their world with independence from not a position of fear or overwhelm, but to know how to break things apart and look at it in its pieces and put it together in a way where they can come up with their own answers. I figured if I taught them how to do that and stood back and let them do it, then when the big questions came up on what to do or why to do it, they'd be equipped to get there themselves. So that's essentially how I pointed them in the direction of what's important was to tune their compass, not to give them a destination.
Good answer.
As I think about destinations, one of the selfish reasons that you guys are on this podcast is because my oldest just graduated high school at 16, but she's on her next leg on her way out, and she is hell-bent. She is hell-bent on moving out and starting her own life. She has all the toxic energy I have to go out and succeed and do her own thing and be her own thing and, get out from the oppression of her father. But as I feel this energy, I realize that my world is going to change significantly. So much of my attention has been raising my kids, being my kids. It's like job, raise kids, and then I get a little bit of me time every once in a while in there. And now that's going to shift a little bit to where they don't need as much as my time. They don't want as much of my time. I try to go hang around them with their friends and they're like, Dad, you can leave, like go. And so this whole next phase of my life is going to shift from focusing on them and getting them where they need to be. And although Chris mentioned, like, we never stop being fathers, we'll always be there. But now you have much more free time. Kurt, what is the transition like as you go from being a father with a kid at home to now you got the free time?
Have you been watching? I've retired like 3 times. I last like about 8 weeks each time I do that. But we sold X4 in like 2016. My son graduates in 2018. I wrap up my time at Sandler middle of 2017. My wife retires as a school teacher in 2018 when my son graduates. So there was no big changes in the Allen household, over that period of time. So it was the only thing that changed was everything. And what I'll tell you is like you make, and you should be really mindful. And I recommend anyone that's coming towards empty nesting is like take an inventory of your friends. If they're coincidentally all your kids, friends, parents, or they're the other lacrosse parents, or all, like, you're going to drift apart. Like, it's unfortunate. Like we have some of those people we stay in touch with, and we actually have a wedding we're going to this weekend where we'll see a lot of those people from the old world, but like, make a plan for it. And so like, I had enough people around me that had marriages fizzle when the kids left the house, and a couple of brothers that had 20-year marriage, 25-year marriages that ended up breaking up. And I think so much of that taking the time to nurture their relationship. They were so all in on being parents, and you have to be. But like, this is going to sound, especially like Father's Day weekend, probably a little flippant, but you have them for 18 years, and then they come back a couple of times. Like, God willing, we're going to live 80, 90 years. Like, that's a moment in time. So, and your significant other, your spouse, if you're lucky enough I'll be married 28 years this summer, to have found the right person, you're going to spend a lot more time with that person than anyone else. So my recommendation to people is to be mindful, be thoughtful when you're thinking about retiring. Like, you'll never hear me say I'm retired again. I just realize it's not going to happen. But like, understand, like, try to figure out what that means. It's just a transition. It's like the kids moving from high school to college and college to on with their lives. The next thing is always better and always cooler. It's always awesome. But it's different. So like, I just encourage people, be mindful of that and nurture that relationship with your significant other if you have one.
I can empathize with you because building this company with my kids as late teenagers versus my kids as 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds is a completely different thing. It feels more like a hobby. I get to do this a little bit guilt-free and on my free time, which feels a whole lot better than the guilt of missing so much of that time. Right. So what I heard with you, Kurt, is that find a hobby, even if it is working.
And make sure that the hobby is somehow connected to the things I talked about, happiness. There's earned success in that. There's connection with other humans, and there's being of service. That, like, I don't think that I thought I was going to go fishing and golfing, and I love golf. I played this morning. That's why my head's so sunburnt. And I love to fish, but I don't love either of them that much. Like, I need a purpose. I need to be in this world. My wife jokes all the time. My husband's a really big deal in a small nerdy world, but so so I need to be part of this whole thing. But so I guess it's just be honest with yourself about what you need, and then like what it's going to take. And for most of us, I think it's human connection. I think it's being of utility, being of service to others, and having for me a connection to God.
So Rob, you're on that
Absolutely.
cusp. Your youngest just graduated. You're going off to college. You're going to be in that space. How does it feel to you, and what are the plans coming up?
Well, I'm 3 years into having one go off to college, and all the fears I had of losing my position as a parent when a kid goes off to college were false. It just shifts. It's a transition, and that's the one thing you can be sure of. Both my older boy, he takes up a lot of space, and when he left the house, it got very quiet. Casey, my younger, he also has a big personality, but he's kind of stealth, and so it was quiet around here. For the first couple of years of Jake being out of the house, I felt a coming down of the energy. I felt more alone time, and as Casey got more independent and spent time out of the house with his friends and all that sort of thing, there was a lot of alone time. Caroline works a lot. Her job is, she has a big job, and she spends a lot of time committed to that. And she's out of here very early in the morning. I work out of the home, so I have always spent a lot of time alone. And so I see it as just a sort of another shift of the degree of my alone time. But the good news is when we come back together, whether it be Caroline and I or the boys as well, that's elective time, and it's good. So I look forward to it, and I do very well alone. I have a set of hobbies, which includes golf and some other things that take up large portions of time. That's really healthy. That you do something you love, that you can get lost in for a half a day at a time or more. If it satisfies you, if it's not just biding time, but it's investing your time and you feel good about it, then there's not a big drop off there. And so I'm comfortable. I'm going to miss when Casey heads off to school in August. It will be interesting to have the house totally quiet. But I do well alone, and I'm ready for it.
Chris, is it true that you never stop worrying about your kids?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I have two married off, a third about to get married in November. And I feel like my story is kind of, I mean, maybe everybody feels this way. I feel like it's unique and different, right? I having 4 kids, 3 daughters. 3 daughters live within, 10 minutes of us now. So I see them almost every day. That's why I said I feel like I have to remind them that we're empty nesters, because it's not that empty around here most of the time. And my oldest daughter, the one that got married 5 years ago, she now has 3 kids, and she lives in the neighborhood with us. So she's like 6 houses away, and I see my grandkids every day. And for someone that's a grandparent that doesn't see their grandkids that often, they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so jealous." I'm like, just be careful what you ask for. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing them once a week. I mean, that would be nice, and not every day. I do love them, and I kick myself every time I kind of cringe. And Frankie is 4.5, and she pushes at the door, "Papa," and she's just Dennis the Menace, and she's a bundle of energy and fun and joy. But I forgot what question I was answering, Cameron. Does it get easier? Oh yeah, yeah, man. Oh yeah, no, I do worry about them. I mean, but then I'm also reminded, we did our best raising them, and we still have great relationships with them. All you could do is teach them right and wrong, and then let them become adults and test out everything you taught them, everything they learned. It's funny now to think about, now that I got the benefit of my 4 being, my youngest being almost about to turn 25. I feel like I'm kind of I'm concerned for them, but I don't really, it's not really worry because I know they're equipped. They're all self-sufficient, productive human beings. They're doing great in life. So I'm kind of like, I'm just worried about them getting sick or having an accident or just the normal stuff. But I feel very, very pleased and happy that, they're living life pretty darn good, in spite of any challenges we had growing up,
I like the way you put that, Chris. It's like we have complete faith in their abilities to kind of manage their lives and be successful, well-adjusted, and happy human beings. But at the end of the day, like in the back of my mind, if you ask me what's the worst thing that could possibly happen to you, it's still something happening to my boy or my wife.
Yeah. I'm sure we've all told our kids, they're like, Dad, I would never do that. I'm like, it's not you I'm worried about. It's the other kids I'm worried about. That was always my response. It's like, I know you're going to do the right thing. Wink, wink, you better. But I can't, I don't know how the other kids were raised. I disciplined you. I didn't discipline those other kids.
I realized, Chris, that I made a tactical error of having you on this podcast. I should have held you off for the grandpas of the channel.
Oh, that's right. I'm okay with that, man.
Cameron, I was totally waiting for you to come in with some kind of comment about the geriatric edition of the father's podcast.
Yeah. All right.
I think I'm younger than both of you. That's the irony.
We're all on different journeys. All right.
Exactly.
Last fire round. Words of advice to specifically the dads, men who are working in the channel, who are raising kids and trying to do their job the best that they can. What is the last words of advice? Kurt, let's start with you.
Just, try not to miss a thing, that I think we all, the greatest kind of erosion to my own personal happiness was thinking I was too important and that things were too important. And that you're realizing that all of this stuff will always be there, but that you like, don't miss a thing, don't miss the recital, don't miss the football game, miss the meeting to go get dressed down by something, and like just be really kind of precious with the time you have with your kids while you have them, because it's a short window.
That's great. Rob, how about you?
I'll use this to tell a little story about setting their compass, because I think this is super important, and this kind of thing gets lost in the nuance. I had a conversation with each of my boys when they were about 12 years old. And the conversation went something like this. As you grow older, you're going to want freedom and privilege. You're going to want the freedom to go and do as you please, and the privilege to spend time out there and enjoy whatever it is you and your friends want to do in your world. I said, freedom and privilege is a currency, and you need to start putting deposits in that bank right now. So what I want you to understand is, when you're 15 years old and you come to me and you ask, can I go do this? Can I have the freedom will you trust me to go do that? What we're gonna be looking at is, how did you set all this up to get the yes answer out of me? Are you acting in a way, and are you making decisions that I have confidence in? Not, I don't have to approve of everything you do, but I have to know you make good decisions out there, because that's the currency you're going to ask to spend when you want your freedom and privilege. Just know that however it is you comport yourself at 12 and 13 and 14 and 15 is going to be the currency you spend when you want freedom and privilege at 15 and 16 and 17. That doesn't stop at 17. It's the same thing over and over, repeat and rinse and repeat over again. And so as far as talking to a parent who's got preteens or young kids, look for that, because it's effective and it's powerful.
Well said. All right, Grandpa, you're up.
That's it. I'll take it.
Papa. Okay. I don't know. It feels weird me calling you Papa. I don't know if I could go there.
We're in Georgia. We're in Georgia, man. It's me, Ma, and Papa.
Well, my wife goes by Gigi because she didn't like Meemaw, so she's Gigi, which I guess that's the 21st century version. A few cliches come to mind. One thing about cliches, there's always an element of truth in them. But we hear about on your tombstone, your birth year and your death year, that dash in the middle. Don't overlook that. That's so important. And another thing, we talk about a lot about work-life balance. And I read an article recently, and it kind of said, no, that's the wrong words. It's not work-life balance. It's work-life harmony. Now, work-life balance implies it's 50-50. I mean, you don't want 50% of your life, to go to just work and your loved ones only get half of you. So yeah, I know it's different for everybody, but I love the idea of work-life harmony. Now, get your job done, get it accomplished. Make sure you have good expectations set with your company, or if you're self-employed, have your own. You got a lot more control there. But yeah, you still got to do what you got to do. You got to take that Sunday night flight occasionally, but make it up somewhere else. And again, looking back on my career, I definitely, there were periods of being a provider for a family of 6. I really had to work, man. I mean, and for about 4 years, I was a 100% commission job. So I really had to work 6 days a week because that's the only way we could make it work. So yeah, just, embrace, those you love, spend time with them. I agree with what Rob and Kurt said, man. It's there's a lot of ways to do it, but just know what's important at the end of the day, because what's the other cliche? Knowing their deathbed said, I wish I spent more time at work, so those cliches over the last 30 years, it helped me kind of, recalibrate when needed.
Well, gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for your willingness to be here today, showing up.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you for putting this together. I know for me, this has been really kind of cathartic. It made me think about things that I probably don't think enough about. So I appreciate you including me in this.
Well, thank you for showing up and being vulnerable, showing some vulnerability. And I think one of the most important topics that I think we could talk about is showing up, being a dad, taking care of the younger generation, helping rear and raise them in a way that brings peace and happiness to their lives and to everybody's life. So thank you for showing up and being